Good evening. I'm Ed Murrow. The name of the program is Person to Person. And come to think of it, no other program can make that claim. Our informal visits, of course, are all live. There's no film. And with the help of this mechanical marvel called television, we'll be visiting first at the home of Steve Allen and his wife, Jane Meadows, and then on to Joliet, Illinois, where the warden of the state penitentiary, Joseph Reagan, and his family will be waiting for us, socially, that is. We'll be ready in exactly 20 seconds.
Noxzema, the most famous skin cream in America, the only leading beauty cream especially medicated for your skin. Medicated for a fresher, lovelier complexion. Teenage skin problems. Rough, red hands. Noxzema for skin comfort, skin beauty presents Person to Person.
Steve Allen is that casual young man you can find on television 5 nights a week. For reasons that are rather apparent, his program is called Tonight. Steve is one of the most versatile men in the business. He's a comedian who can also play it serious. He's a performer who can also write well. He composes music, plays the piano, and on occasion has been known to wrestle with a crocodile. And in addition to all this, he's a very pleasant fellow indeed. Steve's parents were vaudeville troupers, and to continue the show business angle a bit further, Steve Allen is married to actress Jane Meadows, whom we visited last year when she was single and living with her sister Audrey. Jane, Steve, and his son David live in this apartment house on Park Avenue here in New York City. It's about a 25-minute ride across town to Steve's television studio. Since he has to go to work very shortly himself, let's drop in on the Allens and lose no more time.
Tell me, what's in the basket? Oh, the same old jazz, said Red. Baby, said the Wolf, don't put it down. I have to, said Red. It's getting heavy. I'll handle the joke, said the Wolf. Let's open the basket. I've got eyes. I'm hip, said Red. Not to mention the fact that you can say that again. Grandma, what frantic eyes you have. The better to dig you with, my dear, said the Wolf. And Grandma, said Red, I don't want to sound rude, but what a long nose you have. Yeah, said the Wolf, it's a gasser. And Grandma, said Red, your ears are the most, to say the least. What is this, snapped the Wolf, face inspection? I know my ears aren't the greatest, but what are you going to do? Let's just say somebody goofed. And there's more tomorrow.
Evening, Steve.
Hi, Ed.
I didn't want to interrupt. How are you, David?
Fine.
Are you about ready to go to bed now?
Yeah.
That's a nice bathrobe you're wearing there.
Thank you.
Good. Steve, that story you were reading, it sounded familiar, but somehow the words didn't.
Well, it is a little peculiar, Ed. This is a new book with a few distortions of the classic fairy tales that I've put together called Bop Fables. Simon & Schuster bring them out in a few weeks, and I'm trying them on my son here.
David, tell me, do you like those stories?
Yes.
What do you like about them? Just good fun?
Yeah.
Tell me, do you have any chance to go ice skating recently?
Yes.
You like it?
Yeah.
Fall down?
Yeah.
Only once or twice, huh?
Yep.
Good. Steve, where's the prettier half of the Allen family?
Well, as they say in the movies, here she comes now, Ed. Dave, you want to run along, go to bed?
You going to run to bed now, sweetheart? Will you kiss me before you go?
Took a little nap today.
Thank you. And I've got lipstick all over you.
Uh-oh.
Good night, David.
Here somewhere. Excuse me, Dave.
Good night, Dave.
Good evening, Ed.
How are you? Jane, I don't think I've seen you since we dropped in on the Meadows sisters on Person to Person sometime last spring.
No, that's right.
Do you see much of Audrey these days?
Oh, I see Audrey almost every day, Ed. And if I don't see her, then we talk on the phone for a couple of hours and run up Steve's bill.
Tell me, did Audrey ever get that apartment refurnished?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was furnished the Monday after you visited us. It's very pretty. I wish you could see it.
Tell me, were there any repercussions to that visit we made with all that gear?
We had a very nice repercussion. If you remember, Audrey and I sang Jesus Loves Me, This I Know in Chinese.
Yes.
And about, a couple of weeks after that, I did a telethon. And all night long, people requested that I sing the song. Then, about a month later, Audrey and I sang it on I've Got a Secret. And as a result, we're going to cut our record next week. The first record we've ever made.
Bravo. Good. Tell me, Steve, do you two ever think of working together, perhaps in a play or a movie?
Yes, I'd like to very much. The problem actually is time, but we'd like to do something together.
We'd like to do a play.
Yes.
I suppose you might find time to write that play, Steve, since you don't have much to do.
Oh, nothing.
Well, I've got a few other things I'm trying to finish up first, Ed, so maybe I'll have to put the play at the end of the line.
What have you been writing recently?
Well, besides the Bop Fables that we were talking about, Henry Holt is bringing out a book of short stories I've just finished up. And I'm also writing a book about the other comedians in the business, a book called The Funny Men.
Tell me, do you always work on a lot of things at once? Is this a habit? Or?
He always does, Ed.
It's kind of a bad habit. I wouldn't advise anybody else to do it, but as long as I get things finished up, it makes me feel all right. And I work better if I'm doing 84 things at once.
Steve, what do you say about funny men in this book that's upcoming?
Well, I like humor. By that I mean I like to watch other comedians work. I'm a great audience. I like just about everybody in the business. I like to listen to them and laugh at them, I should say. And I, in this book, tried to analyze what the heck I'm laughing at. It's about the size of it.
It's a very unusual idea. I've read parts of it, Ed, and it's very fascinating.
Steve, you must get some other things off your chest, too, don't you, in that book?
Yes, I have a few things I wanted to say for a long time, just not to, do 4 hours here about the book. One thing is that I try to refute the old belief that there's no such thing as a new joke. I think that's sort of a silly belief, but I hear people, sometimes even in the business, say there are only 7 basic jokes, I think there are millions of jokes.
Well, Jane, you probably have some thoughts about comedians, especially comedian Steve Allen. Do you have any special problems living with him?
Problems, Ed?
Yes. Did I say the wrong thing?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, I only have one problem with Steve.
It's our marriage.
He's a little bit, Ed, he's a little bit absent-minded, and he has a habit occasionally of forgetting things. Mostly things like the car. He will drive the car to the theater and put it in the garage across the street and then come home in a taxi. But
one night I brought the car home in a taxi. And
can I tell about Valentine's Day last year? You wouldn't mind, would you?
Well, tell it anyway.
May I?
Yeah.
Last year on Valentine's Day, Steve had forgotten about it until I turned up with my present for him. And he sat down and wrote me a poem. And it was the most beautiful poem I've ever read in my life. I still have it.
What did it say?
Well,
it's
it was...
put away.
Ah. Well, Steve, from what I've seen so far, Jane's done a pretty good job of getting your place fixed up.
She certainly has. I lived here under rather unusual circumstances. I sort of slept on a hook in the closet and that sort of thing. It was, sort of a bachelor's apartment. But Jane has done a wonderful job of redecorating it. She's worked with Jim Gum.
Yes, a young man who's helped me. Actually, my hobby is interior decorating. And Betty Furness lived here before Steve took the apartment, Ed.
She moved out because the icebox didn't work anymore.
But one of the things that I liked was putting the shutters up. There are lots of shutters in California, but most people in New York have curtains, and I decided it would be a little different if I used shutters. And
should we show them around the place?
I'd love to have you see the dining room. We're walking through the hall now, and this room is the dining room.
Pardon my back.
And it's also actually my very favorite room in the house. It's my favorite because it was 2 very small bedrooms, and Steve and I had a wall taken down in the middle of the room. And to make it look larger, we bought this wallpaper that is, well, I looked at every piece of wallpaper in New York City before we picked it. It has a feeling of a perspective, at least in the room it does, and it makes it look longer and larger.
That's where we stayed in Miami, right here, that little room.
Jane, tell me, when you were decorating, did you have many run-ins with the painters?
Oh, yeah, she ran in with a new painter every 10 minutes.
Actually, the only thing is that I'm a frustrated painter, Ed. I like to paint walls and ceilings and floors and things like that. But we do have a painter in the family who paints pictures, and that's Steve.
Well, it seems to me that everyone is going in for painting these days.
And it's got to stop.
I have a...
and you're going to stop it, huh?
You're going to stop me.
I have a little painting in the hall of Steve's that I'd love to have you see.
Good.
It's this one right here. He's done quite a few, but this one is my favorite because somehow, well, I don't know, I think it's the simplest one you've ever done.
It's that for sure, I'll tell you. I believe in trying everything, Ed, but I tried painting and found out I had no talent. There's no sense fighting these things.
No, this has a very primitive, simple feeling, and I love it.
What's the bust on the piano? Are you a sculptor, too, Steve?
No, that's something I've ever tried, Ed. This, however, is Jane. That's her right there. This is something that she had done when she was in Italy a couple of years ago.
Done about 8 years ago, I guess.
About 8 years ago. By Farpi...
Vignoli.
Vignoli.
Very nice, too.
Fine piece of work.
Steve, is that piano where you write your songs?
Oh, I write a few here, steal a few, but I usually do the musical work.
He's done a lot of things. Here is an album, Ed, that Steve has just brought out, Music for Tonight. It has about 3 of your numbers in it, doesn't it, dear?
Can't tell if this is a program or an inventory, but anyway, here. Here it is. This is an album that, as Jane says, we're bringing out in a couple of weeks. And it may go back in after about 2 more. I don't know, but we're bringing it out.
Jane, you once told me that Steve was the shy, bookish type. He doesn't strike me that way somehow.
Oh, well, what I meant, Ed, when I said he was a shy, bookish type,
I read shy books.
I was comparing him to the average performer. And I think that the average performer is a little more extroverted and maybe a little more aggressive than Steve. Actually, I think Steve is like you or my father and my brothers. He's a very serious man and a very thoughtful man. And I don't know whether you know it or not, but Steve was just elected the Outstanding Man of the Year by the Junior Chamber of Commerce of New York City. And to me, that's what he is.
So you got him all figured out already?
Well, I've been working on it for about 2.5 years.
Steve, I know you have a rough schedule. What does this do to your home life?
Well, it ruins it altogether, Ed, to tell you the truth. I was very happy to be on this show because this is the nicest little visit I've had with Jane in 6 weeks. No, to tell you the truth, it just seems worse than it is because while my hours are peculiar, like I don't get to bed till 3 in the morning, I get up at noon, and I see Jane at peculiar times, but if you add the hours up at the end of a 24-hour period, I suppose we spend as much time together as the average couple.
Well, I see a lot of you on television, you know.
Do you ever criticize him really severely?
No, I don't criticize Steve. I have been trying to learn from Steve a great deal about comedy. And I can't make a joke, Ed, but I do think that today I know when Steve is going to make a joke. I can sort of see a little twinkle in his eye.
Well, even I can do that.
I want to tell you that the day that we were married, when we were in the middle of the ceremony, where, you know, Steve has to repeat, I, Steve Allen, take you, Jane Meadows. Yes. Steve had taught me that there is something in comedy. Do you call it, what do you call it, dear? The extension or something, exaggeration?
The extension of a commonplace action to that third limit.
Well, in the middle of the ceremony where Steve was saying, I, Steve Allen, take you, Jane Meadows, to be my lawfully wedded wife, all of a sudden, outdoors, a dog barked. And I thought, he isn't going to. And I looked up at him, and all of a sudden I saw the little twinkle in his eye. And after the ceremony, I said, Steve, did you hear the dog bark? And he said, yes. And I had to pinch myself to keep from doing it.
No, I wasn't going to bark. Maybe growl a little bit.
Steve, tell me this. Can anybody learn to ad-lib?
I believe they can, Ed. As a matter of fact, everybody already knows how. It's something you do all day. You know, you go into a butcher shop, you don't think, now what one-liner will I lay on the butcher here to get some good pork chops? You just order what you want. And I think the matter then is just to learn how to relax on the air the way you do in a butcher shop, and that's about it.
Well, why can't I do it then?
We have no butcher shop around here, Ed.
Well, I take it both of you are doing what you want to do. Is that right?
I am. Are you?
I sure am.
Well, there you are, both committed now. Thanks very much, Steve Allen and Jane Meadows.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks for letting us come and visit you. It's very pleasant indeed.
Thank you, Ed.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good luck. In just a moment, we'll take you to the Illinois State Prison and a visit with Warden Joseph Reagan and his family.
I'd like to tell you about a new kind of beauty care that's 3 ways better for your skin, thanks to Noxzema. Noxzema cleanses, softens, and brightens your complexion in a way no other leading cream or soap alone can. And here's why. 1, Noxzema is greaseless. It washes off with water. Cleanses simply, quickly, and thoroughly, like soap. But it's better because it never leaves your skin feeling dried out or drawn. 2, Noxzema helps soften and smooth your skin as only a cream can. But because it's not sticky or greasy, you don't have to top it off in the astringent or use it twice to get your skin really clean. Your skin feels cream soft, but so cool and fresh. 3, Noxzema helps brighten and freshen your skin because it's medicated. 5 medicinal ingredients help heal externally caused blemishes fast, help protect your complexion, and help keep it glowing with vitality.
Try Noxzema. You'll get beauty results so fast, and no wonder. As Nancy points out, Noxzema has 3 built-in advantages no other leading cream or soap alone can give you. 1, it's greaseless. It washes off with water. That means it cleanses more thoroughly. 2, leaves skin cream soft but so cool and fresh. 3, it's medicated. Try Noxzema tomorrow in the 33-cent trial size. Then we know you'll want the great economy size to keep looking lovely always.
And now, here's Ed Murrow.
Joseph E. Reagan is the warden of one of the biggest and toughest prisons in this country, the Joliet branch of the Illinois State Penitentiary. It's a maximum security institution. That means Warden Reagan has to handle about 4,000 criminals who cannot be handled anyplace else in Illinois. Joe Reagan first went to jail when he was 5 years old. That was back in 1902 when his father became a county sheriff. Since that time, he has lived with prisoners for all but 3 of the past 53 years. The Joliet prison is located 35 miles southwest of Chicago on Route 66. That's the Lincoln Highway. This is the administration building. The warden's office is on the 2nd floor. And for 20 years, Mr. and Mrs. Reagan have lived in a 12-room apartment on the 3rd floor. This is where they brought up their son and daughter. The prison is their home. Good evening, Warden Reagan.
Well, Mr. Merrill.
What do you hear from the mob tonight?
Well, none of them here are satisfied. We don't have any satisfied customers here.
Well, I guess things are rather quiet at this time of night.
Yes, they are. All the boys have been in bed for 30 minutes, but they probably are listening to radio programs with their earphones.
Warden, how many men do you have inside the walls tonight?
I can best answer that by going out to the count board. You know, all the people in this wonderful Joliet area involved here tonight, and we at Statesville are especially glad to have you, because we think that prisons are everyone's business, and that everyone should concern themselves with prisons and the men that live in them. Good night.
Tell me, what time does your working day end, Warden?
Well, generally 6 to 6:30, and I start at 6:30 in the morning.
And just where are we now?
Well, we're in the lobby of the administration building, and if you'll notice, here's our count board. There's 160 at the farm, 1072 at the Joliet branch, 3,039 at Stateville, and 175 at the diagnostic depot. That, of course, is our receiving plant where men are classified for the institution in which they are to serve in Illinois. Illinois is one of the few states in America that does classify prisoners, and while we don't have all the institutions we would like, we think we are doing a fair job.
You have a model there somewhere, haven't you,
yes,
Warden?
Yes, we do. Here's a model of Stateville. And I'm perhaps a little selfish, but I'm proud of Stateville because most of these buildings here have been built since my time here. We're now in the administration building. This is a hospital, a chapel where 7 different religious services are held. And this is the dining room and the kitchen. And these are all cell houses. Stateville is one of the only prisons in the world that has circular cell houses. This is the furniture factory, the soap factory, our vocational training school where 42 trades are taught, our powerhouse, a number of other shops here, our tailor shop, our store, our bookbinding plant, and our grade school. And here is our high school. Men with less than an 8th grade education must attend grade school, and we encourage them to attend high school. Of course, I'm rather vain when I say that Stateville is one of the only prisons in America with a full-time 4-year high school. And by the way, we have 20 acres of flowers inside of the walls.
I've heard about those. Warden Reagan, how many of your staff members live there with you?
Well, there's about 100 men live in the quarters above my quarters. Would you like to go up and see my quarters?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You know, I'm glad to have America look on and hear something about prisons. I expect to have a book someday that will give quite a story of prisons. This is where my assistant warden lives.
Yes?
And over here is my quarters. And by the way, most of the furnishings in this house were made in our furniture factory, which is one of our vocational training schools. And this is my wife, Loretta, Mr. Merrill.
Good evening, Mrs. Reagan.
Good evening, Mr. Merrill.
Mrs. Reagan, your husband has been in jails for about 50 years now. How long have you been in with him?
Well, I've been in since 1926, when my husband took me to jail as a bride.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, does he get away from business when he walks up those stairs, or does he bring his troubles with him?
No, he doesn't bring his troubles with him. I brain on this floor. This is my domain. And his troubles stay downstairs where he's the boss.
Tell me, is the rest of your family at home tonight, Mrs. Reagan?
Yes, they are. Would you like to have me gather them while my husband shows you the rest of the apartment?
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Here's a small dinette where the family have their meals, very comfortable. And then here is my barber shop. By the way, here's my boy Joe, who has learned the barber trade here, and he's really a nice, good barber.
Good evening, Joe.
All right, Joe, you can go ahead. And these pictures here are pictures of friends and governors and directors, both past and present. If I have been a success in the prison business, it is because of the fine support that all of them have given me. There's an old ball and chain. Of course, this has been out of use for a great number of years, perhaps 30.
About 30 years since it's been used.
That's right. And these are leg irons. In the old days, they were riveted onto a man's ankles. And they remained on him for months at a time, I am told. It was before my time. And, you know, we go in a lot for education here in prison. In the old days, that was not done so much. Confinement was the only thought of prison people.
Well, Warden Reagan, how successful are prisons in general in this matter of rehabilitation?
Well, I think they are successful because many prisons, and especially we here at Joliet, insist on religious training, academic grade in high school, and vocational training. And we do everything possible for a man while he's in prison, knowing that 95% of all men who are sentenced to institutions in America are someday going out. And it's our idea to send them out better equipped than when they entered the institution. And in many cases, men come to prison because of the lack of an education. I think prisons are going to advance as time goes on, and I'm sure that if we had more prisons and could closer classify men, where we could have less walled institutions and more minimum security and proper staff. And by the way, I have a fine staff here at Joliet and Stateville, and I'm very proud of them. They have helped me if I have been a success at all.
Is there need for more parole officers, Warden?
Yes, there's always need for more parole officers and supervision. Probation is important, and every treatment should be tried that is available to stop men from coming to prison, because crime takes a tremendous toll in tax monies from the people of America. And everyone should interest themselves in the kid who is going to be a prisoner tomorrow. Too few of us pay any attention to the fellow if he isn't in our family. See that he goes to church, that he attends school, both academic and vocational, that he is supervised and given some care during his leisure time. And last but not least, I think there's more delinquent parents and adults than there are delinquent children.
Well, thank you very much for those comments, Warden. I wonder if the rest of the family has now assembled.
I imagine they perhaps are in the living room. Oh, up here is some more of our home. We have a large dining room there that we have when we have guests, and we have people here from all over the world. Another living room and a library. And we have a lot of room here, as you can see. 12 large rooms for just my wife and I.
Yes?
Oh, yes, they're here now. I'd like you to meet my daughter, Jane Farner, Mr. Merrill.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Merrill.
And my son-in-law, Jerry Farner, Mr. Merrill.
Good evening, Mr. Feiner.
Hi, Mr. Merrill. And my son, Bill Reagan, Mr. Merrill.
Good evening, Bill Reagan. How are you?
Fine, Mr. Merrill.
Mrs. Reagan, judging from the high chair and the toys I saw there just a moment ago, there must be another member of the family around, isn't there?
Yes, there are two grandchildren,
Oh.
Stevie and Laura. And they visit us every week, sometimes oftener.
Good. Tell me, how much of a staff do you have to help you there?
Well, we have 6 housemen that help us up here.
And they've been with you for some time, I take it.
Yes, they have.
Mrs. Farner, how did you and Bill get your schooling?
Well, we drove into Joliet every day to go to school, Mr. Merle. We both attended grade school and high school in Joliet, and then we went away for college.
Bill, how about your friends? Who did you play with as a youngster when you were growing up in jail, so to speak?
Well, in my preschool days, the inmates here at the penitentiary were my companions. And after I started school, well, I had friends in Joliet. My brother-in-law was one of them. We were friends and later relatives, and we both worked for General Motors Acceptance together.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, didn't it seem a little strange when you were courting your wife while she was living in prison? What was it like?
Well, one thing, I couldn't enter unannounced. And then I've got to admit that when Jane and I were dating, I'd come out to pick her up, and I'd get to the front gate. I'd have a little bit of a fear that the guard at the front gate might tell me that the warden hadn't given permission for me to enter.
And did they check you in and out so that they always knew what time you brought her home?
Well, I didn't find that out until about, 3 weeks after Jane and I had started dating quite regular. And Jane's father mentioned one night that everyone that enters and leaves a prison, it's marked at the front gate. In other words, he knew exactly what time Jane was coming in.
I see. Warden Reagan, do you ever hear from your ex-prisoners?
Yes, I do. Just this evening I had a telephone call from a far-off city in which a man who had served time here wished me good luck. And, of course, I got many letters, and at Christmas time I received several hundred postal cards in the neighborhood of 800 or 900. Christmas cards, I should say. And, of course, that's a warden's stock and trade. I'm always glad to get news from a boy who has served time here.
What's the most satisfying thing about your job? Is it when a boy gets out and makes good and then lets you know about it?
That's very true. That, of course, is really the thing that I strive for. And everyone here in our setup, we have custody first. That's the duty. Education and proper training during their stay in prison. And there are a great many men that make good. We only hear of the failures. We never hear of the man who makes good, and that's important to society.
Well, Warden Reagan, one of your graduates dropped by to see me today, and he said, as wardens go, Reagan is a fine guy. And I think that's high praise. And thank you very much indeed, Warden Reagan, Mrs. Reagan, Mr. and Mrs. Farner, and Bill Reagan. Thanks for letting us come and visit you at Joliet.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, and good night. We'll be back in a moment.
Worried about detergent hands? You can throw away those rubber gloves if you use Noxzema. Smooth it on each time your hands have been in water. It's medicated to help heal rough red skin and detergent hands fast. See how soft, white, and lovely your hands can look with Noxzema.
It's family medicine chest time at your favorite store. Look for the family medicine chest display that features Noxzema skin cream, along with 5 other leading medicated products. And now here's Ed Murrow.
There are some of the people who made tonight's program possible. Next week on Person to Person, we will be visiting General Jimmy Doolittle and Les Paul and Mary Ford. And now, from Person to Person, good night and good luck.
Next week, Edward R. Murrow and Person to Person will be brought to you by Amoco American Oil Company, maker of famous Amoco gas, the premium gas that gives you natural power. Safe power, too, because Amoco gas has no additive that could leave a harmful metallic deposit inside your car's engine. So next week, same time, Person to Person, sponsored by American Oil Company and its Amoco dealers from Maine to Florida.